Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and introduce our two speakers. We are really fortunate to have Michael David and Cece Osborn here from the Haley-Ketchum area. Michael David is on Ketchum City Council, and he's also the Idaho Walk Bike Alliance board president. And I met Michael when he was a Safe Routes to School coordinator at Mountain Rides. We actually were at a Looking Glass Academy, I think in Twin Falls, when you and I met.
That's true.
And Cece went on a long walk for 700 miles on the Continental Divide. I still can't believe this story. I know that there's like more to this. With her dog Chip, that's a Chihuahua, and stopped to see some friends in Haley, and she's been there ever since. So she's the Safe Routes to School coordinator at Mountain Rides. And I think also joining you guys today is Ed Johnson, who's the Urban Renewal Agency. So go ahead, Michael, Cece, and Ed, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Cynthia. And Cece did count how many steps her Chihuahua took on that journey. So if you need that information, she can get that to you. That's a lot of little steps. We about 9 years ago redeveloped 4th Street in Ketchum, which runs east-west through the center of the community core. And we widened the sidewalks in a section. We didn't complete it all the way. They ran out of funding. But it basically was a connection between the city limits of Sun Valley and our bike path, the Wood River Trails, that have been, in existence for over 35 years. And so, they did this and designed it to potentially become a pedestrian mall in the future. But in the meantime, they put some chicanes in and put some traffic calming measures, widened the sidewalks, kind of cut down on the number of parking spaces that were there. And the main centerpiece was they converted a dirt parking lot that had 24 parking spaces, and this is right in the heart of the community core, and converted that to, there's the old parking lot where now stands Town Square. So they put paving stones and tables and fire pits and a stage, and created Town Square. And so it became a kind of a gathering place. It became a lower traffic. There's a picture of Town Square. It became a lower traffic street. It runs parallel to Sun Valley Road, which is the old Highway 93 that connects Sun Valley and Ketchum cities. And most of the vehicular traffic goes on Sun Valley Road. So 4th Street became a place where pedestrians often went. And so when COVID kind of was when we were in the heat of COVID, Cece and I took a walk through town, and we kind of daydreamed about, at this time there were literally no cars on the streets. Everyone was quarantined, and we daydreamed about closing 4th Street, which again could connect the two cities, connect the bike path. There's a bike path that runs from Sun Valley all the way through Ketchum. Well, it doesn't run through Ketchum. That's the issue. Is it then starts again on the west side of Ketchum. And so we daydreamed about closing 4th Street, certainly during COVID or maybe longer, to opening it. I'm trying to learn to use Cynthia's lingo, that we're opening the streets to pedestrians and bikes, and closing it to vehicles. And so that's kind of where the idea was born. Again, we've been talking about it as a individual city council people and others in the community about turning it into a pedestrian mall, but no one's really had the courage to fight against the loss of parking spaces that people are concerned about, or you know, that passion that we have to get in our vehicles in America. So, but COVID was kind of a little bit of a Kickstarter for this conversation. And, you know, I was looking at it from a connection of Sun Valley and the bike path, and Cece had some ideas from a safe routes perspective. Cece?
Sure. Can you all see this clearly, or does it need to be enlarged? My screen with the map on it, is that being shared?
If you could enlarge it, that'd be great.
Okay, let me try and do that. Sorry. Here we go. I don't know if I can actually. I'll just talk you through it. So as the blue line there is 4th Street, which is the bike.
You got to share your screen again.
Yeah, it's not being shared anymore, Cece.
How's that?
There you go.
So the blue line going through town there is 4th Street, the bike corridor, and it's of particular interest to the Sun Valley Community School, who's interested in changing the commuter culture of their students, staff, and faculty. They have a parking lot problem, so next year they're looking into providing programs for young children and children of all ages to motivate them to walk and bike to school. So 4th Street's the safest connection through town there, and you can see in some of these photos here, there are sharrows that direct children along, or people along 4th Street. Something else that was taking hold when Michael and I first went on that walk through town exploring what could be, and as we were following different cities around the world opening up streets to people and bicyclists and open dining, and there'd already been local conversations about open dining in the streets and a lot of excitement around that. We also sort of drew out this dream circuit that included 4th Street as a safe route, but also explored opportunities to either do road diets or some sort of, whether it be a completely car-free corridor, to some extent, some extension of walking and biking infrastructure to bring in other people with other interests into the project.
Yeah, so, you know, what often happens is then we kind of went to the mayor and with the shooting for the whole shebang, and asked to see if we could get 4th Street, the entirety of 4th Street opened, excuse me, and as government tends to do sometimes, they started whittling back at how much of 4th Street might be palatable to the community at this point. And what was also happening was we were seeing a flattening of the curve here in Ketchum and Blaine County, and the vehicles were returning along with the people. So we kind of settled on a section, the main section of, or 2 blocks of 4th Street to open up to pedestrians. And those were the ones that were contiguous to Town Square, which was, I think, the biggest concern or thing that we were trying to make happen here was to basically open up Town Square and have it flow right into 4th Street there. You can see on the left of that photo, that's Atkinson's Market. That's the main, or the big grocery store in town. You know, we've got this area here, and we lost a total of 11 parking spots in the 2 blocks, or gained those parking spots for for the pedestrians and bikes. And basically, it's just an ability for people to spread out. You can see we put some, the staff worked real quick and put some tables out there. They put some planters, which are only temporary, because at the same time the city council was contemplating this, the Urban Renewal Agency, and Cynthia mentioned Ed's on this call, they met, and they were very willing to help with this, and they put $25,000 towards getting some bollards that will be retractable bollards that will be somewhat permanent, and you know, in place of those planters that are kind of temporary there. So you know, the plan is the city council met, the mayor moved quickly, the staff moved quickly, and after the URA had made their commitment, and the city council approved, unanimously approved to open up those 2 streets to pedestrians and bicyclists and skateboarders, and close them off to vehicular traffic for at least for the summer. We didn't really set an end date, or maybe we did. I think we said Thanksgiving. So and you know, I think that all of the council members were supportive of using this experiment to see if we could in the future open up the entirety of 4th Street from Sun Valley city limits all the way to the West Ketchum and the bike path, and make it a pedestrian corridor. It's called the Ketchum Heritage Corridor, and you know, it was designed to be able to turn into a pedestrian corridor, and I think that's what we're shooting for. There's some things in one of the photos Cece showed. There's a rectangular rapid fast flashing beacon at the intersection of 4th Street and Main Street, which is, as many of us in Idaho have, a state highway running through our city. And one of the things that ITD is going to do is that they said that we're gonna get a hawk installed to replace that rectangular rapid flashing beacon.
Yeah, I was going to, sorry to interrupt you there, Michael. Yeah. I was going to say that the Ketchum Urban Renewal Agency actually also allocated $75,000 to that hawk system. And then ITD is also going to come in and put in a scramble at the Main and Sun Valley as well.
Right. Thanks, Ed, for that clarification. And that, you know, that's how it's all coming together. And it's a partnership between ITD and the URA and the city to make this happen. And you know, we have encouraged with the rectangular flashing beacon pedestrians to use 4th Street. It has become a lot safer than it was before that was installed. But I think the hawk is the next level, and the hawk is also something that will give us the ability to sign when we open up 4th Street only to pedestrians and bikes, the length of it in the future. So, you know, I think the scrambles are another thing that maybe we can do another silver lining with the scrambles to talk about those. We're excited about ITD putting in those scrambles at Sun Valley Road and Main Street, and the addition of the hawk, and thank the URA for their commitment to this too. And it's been fun. There's been a lot of positive response to it so far. We haven't had a lot of great weather for people to hang out at the tables and walk around yet, but town's starting to fill up with visitors, and we know the weather will turn here soon, and we're looking forward to this experiment, and an experiment that hopefully turns into a permanent and expands to the length of the street. So it hasn't all been positive. There's been some people that are not happy about having the vehicular traffic being suspended for the summer. But we'll see how that goes. We're not ever able to please everyone. So
Michael,
yeah,
do you have any events planned to celebrate the opening of that street? Has that been talked about at all?
We
Like a
we haven't
party
planned
or-
any specific events. I don't know if Julian was able to jump on this call or not. I'm scanning through the participants, but I see. Are you there, Julian? JT Yo? um, but not specifically, but there are events that will take place in town square, and I think just that ability for people to spread out. I went to the market today, and there were 3 ladies with with about a total of about 7 dogs, and they were standing in the middle of the street and then moving over to town square, and it in my mind, it's an extension of town square, and it makes it into just a more space and a great public space. So we'll see. I think it'll be a good experiment in that with Atkinson's Market being located right there, it is the busiest section in the core, but again, I think that will show that the sky is not going to fall when you have to park a block away.
So that's a great project. Does anybody have any questions for Michael or Cece or Ed about this project?
I have a question. I'm curious to know what the local businesses thought about the opening of the street, and if they perceived like a reduction in parking is often a complaint from any city, especially when there's land use patterns involved and traffic patterns. Did they see any negatives with the lack of visibility from the street or with parking?
Yeah, there's been a couple of business owners that were not happy about it. One in particular is a dry cleaner who has 2 spots on 4th Street right in front of their business, and I do have some is it sympathy or empathy? I never know which one to use, but that those parking spots have kind of de facto turned into their parking spots for loading and unloading. They're not specifically theirs, are obviously public parking spots. So they were very concerned and had some concerns of maybe some of their elderly clients that were going to have to park a little bit of ways. So yeah, they had a concern. There was another business owner who actually doesn't have any parking spaces in front of the business, but was worried that people were not going to see the business because they saw it when cars were driving by. So hopefully, and the mayor met with that business owner, and hopefully we'll see an increase in I think they call it window shopping for a reason. And I think hopefully that you got your eyes on the road when you're driving, but when you're walking, you can see that. So I believe there will be an increase in foot traffic, and hopefully those businesses won't see any downside, and may even see an upside. But certainly there were some that had concerns, and it wasn't as much about the parking spaces as much as there's a feeling that, except for the cleaners had that the parking space concern, but the other ones were a feeling that people were going to avoid that section of town, and I think that's the opposite of what will happen, but we'll see.
And it may take a while to get there too. The summer, the warmer weather, and people just start walking around down there. Jim Hansen, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. Deanna Smith probably wants to ask this question too. We've been talking about the impacts on businesses that might have a liquor license. And when, have you run into this, running up into state law and restrictions on the ability to serve alcohol in the public right of way, even though you're basically letting the seating extend into the public right of way so that you can then allow more pedestrian and bicycle activity in what would be the automobile area. So have you run into that problem? Do we need to change state law, or can the governor issue a extension of his order to say part of the emergency would be to extend the ability to use liquor licenses out in the public right of way?
Yeah, we haven't, Jim, up to this point. These two sections do not, I guess, no, they do border on one restaurant. But we haven't officially said that the restaurants can move into the public right of way. We have just set some tables similar to the tables that we have in town square for people to sit at. But I think that as we look at other possibilities of moving, allowing restaurants to use a parking space in front of their business to create a parklet and serve potentially alcohol on those at those places, I think we definitely will need to look at that. Those though are not on state highways. Those would be on city streets. So I think we'd need to look at the city ordinances on those.
I saw Sean taking notes, so maybe he can answer that too.
Yeah, Michael, we should chat at some point. And Jim, I'd love to follow up with you as well. That's something that we're actively looking at as part of our, what's next after 8th Street. But yeah, I won't get in the middle of your presentation here. Just wanted to mention that's definitely one of the things that we've encountered as well.
Great.
Christine, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, I was wondering, before you even proposed this to your city council, did you go to the grocery store, since it's the major business, and get buy-in from them before you even went further, since you were going to be blocking them directly?
We did talk to the Atkinson's family, and they are the most skillful business owner at maintaining Switzerland's status in Ketchum, and I think that's why they've survived so long and done so well. They do, if you remember, or if Cece can throw up that one photo, they've got their own private parking lot in front of Atkinson's that is let's see, you can see on the left side of that photo there, that's that one car. Oh, that's a video. That person walking there is walking right in front of their own parking spot, their own parking lot there. We did lose 7 spots in front of the market, but as you can see too in this photo, the video, this street that is opened, East Avenue, you can see the street sign. That's where the bulk of the parking in nearest proximity, and it extends to the south of this photo, is for Atkinson's Market. I think that they're going to help. They're going to throw some barbecues up there. They've said during the summer too, and try to make better use of that space. And I do think that we did talk to them. I think that it remains to be seen for them to see how it affects them. But when we used to have the farmers market one day a week during the summer, and we would close off this section of we would open this section of 4th Street to the farmers market. They saw some of their biggest days on farmers market days. Now that's directly related to the type of business that they do, but people would go get their fresh produce and things like that, and then run into Atkinson's for wine and milk and other things that weren't available at the farmers market. But I do think they're hopeful that it will increase the activity in front of the store while they still have that private parking lot.
Michael, I think it's also important to note that the closure or opening of 4th Street, if you want to phrase it that way, has been in the Ketchum Comprehensive Plan that was dated 2014. And I think it goes all the way back to a 2004-06 traffic study that has been contemplating this for a long time. So there's been a lot of opportunity for businesses to comment, and obviously a buy-in period when you're drafting that comprehensive plan.
Yeah. That's a great point too. And go ahead, Christine.
It was in your comprehensive plan to close it?
To design it and to make it a pedestrian friendly corridor. And so and the design of it was contemplated to at some point maybe be only for pedestrian, as a pedestrian.
I'm just wondering because it's the first place I visit when I go to Ketchum, when we travel up there,
Sure.
is the grocery store. So,
Yep, and
That's
again,
interesting.
it is, with the exception of the block, the 2 blocks this summer that go east and west, there's still access to their parking lot, both East Avenue, which goes north-south, just west of the market, and Leadville Avenue are open to traffic. So yeah, it'll take a little getting used to for people that are coming back up to the area. But I don't think, I do, it by nature of its design and the fact that Sun Valley Road runs parallel to it 1 block to the south, it has been one of the lowest traffic volume streets in the core. And so, yeah, people will have to maybe, rearrange how they get there. But again, we contemplated closing the north-south and East Avenue and decided to keep that open so that people can move freely north-south. That won't change anything.
Does anybody have one final question before we move on to the city of Boise?
I have a question, Cynthia. I sent it to you in the chat box. I'm curious if you guys are collecting any data so you can evaluate this and analyze this for future actions, expanding it, getting rid of it, changing it, putting it elsewhere.
I had thoughts about that today as I was out there taking these photos and noticed a number of bicyclists. I've also talked to some people I know, friends, and then people I've just in passing about bicycling through Ketchum, and people who had questions about that corridor and how tables in the street might change that corridor. So I'm all ears if anyone has advice as to how to do that.
The one thing I'd recommend is, especially per some of the questions you were asked, there's typically misconceived notions ahead of time that people aren't going to like it, but businesses won't like it, etc. And pretty much all the research and data disproves that. And what's really interesting at collecting data is to kind of get people's reactions initially and then towards the end, because they tend to shift. People, once they adjust to it and they realize, oh yeah, I can still park and get to the store. Maybe I have to walk a block or something, or I have to park behind the store when I used to park in front of the store. But people do adjust and they find they don't mind it. And businesses, for the most part, far and away experience an increase in traffic rather than a reduction. So it'd be good to get some early and later. It's too late to get before and after, but you could get early and later.
No, I think that's a great point, Deanna, and I think hopefully we'll put some stuff together. Everyone had to try to get the crystal ball out and find out what it was going to be like, for lack of a better term, post-COVID. But as we're at this phase of COVID, especially in our tourist-based economy, and what we're seeing, early returns are, we're actually, I think, busier than usual right now in June. We've got, it may be a little bit of a different tourist than normal years in that people are ironically driving more than flying. So we may see more vehicles, but we contemplated this kind of with the COVID in full force and less vehicles on the street. So I think it's going to be a good test. We are probably in store for a busy season. Again, just probably more drive-in tourism and second homeowners that are spending extended periods of time here. But I think we're in store for a busy summer. So this will be a great indicator, and to be able to collect that data and get a good feel for the effect on the economy and just the feel and everything. It'll be interesting. So I'm looking forward to it.
That's great. This is a great project. Okay, just a really quick question before we move on to the city of Boise. Michael, yes or no? Did COVID move this project up?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Cece. Thank you, Ed. That's a great project. We're excited about that. I'm going to move on to the city of Boise now, and I'm going to introduce Sean Keithley. Sean is the Director of Economic Development for the city of Boise, and he is going to talk about 8th Street, which is our block in downtown Boise, and what the city has done to provide more space for the restaurants to have outdoor dining and to remove motor vehicles. Sean, you want to go ahead?
Sure thing. Thank you, Cynthia, and thank you, the Idaho Walk Bike Alliance, for hosting this. Michael, I have to say, listening to your presentation, it's heartening to hear about so many of the similarities, as well as probably many of the things that kept us up at night in the days leading up to opening the street. It's really uncanny and cool to hear about your project there. I think you guys have done some great work. So I'm going to try to share my screen here so I can share the slides that I have. Okay, everybody see the PowerPoint? Okay. I'd also just like to acknowledge the, I think we have at least 2 electeds here in the audience, Commissioner Hanson from Ada County Highway District and Council President Elin Clegg. Great to see you here. And also, I believe Jen Hensley from the Downtown Boise Association is also here with us. Jen and the DBA provided an incredible amount of support for this project. I just wanted to acknowledge their partnership and participation in this. So as Michael and Cynthia have emphasized, our project here is an opening of a street. So it's 8th Street and downtown Boise. This is really the first of what we're hoping to be a larger initiative across the city where similar types of projects can take place. We've branded this along with our with the DBA and the Capital City Development Corporation, a Boise on the Block project. So this is sort of the branding for the collective effort we're attempting to do with similar projects around the city, with 8th Street being the first. So a little context first for those of you who may not be familiar with 8th Street. It's much like 4th Street in Ketchum. It's at the heart of downtown Boise. I believe the offices of the Idaho Walk Bike Alliance are on 8th Street. So I know Cynthia is very familiar. It's also like 4th Street, a pedestrian and bike focused street in its design, and was so before we opened the street to non-motorized traffic. It's really a street with two sides in terms of character. So we have the north side is very restaurant focused, and the south side, that south block, is a little bit more mixed between retail, office, and restaurant. The genesis of this street came from, as it's known today and as its character shows today, came from largely an investment that the city's urban renewal agency, the Capital City Development Corporation, made over the years, starting, I think it's accurate to say, in the 1980s. And over the years, invested in infrastructure on the street, including sidewalks, brick pavers, street trees, light fixtures, the bike lanes you see there in the paint, the bike racks, et cetera. So at the end of the Urban Renewal District's life, at the sunset in 2018, the city took ownership from the Capital City Development Corporation, and it became the only 2 blocks of street that we actually own as a city in Boise. The rest of the streets being owned and operated by the Ada County Highway District. We had some bollards installed as well in 2018, which helped to add to its potential as a ped bike, potential festival block street. And this is something that has proven out in the various events that we have there. Of course, pre-COVID, it functioned a little bit differently than it is right now. But historically, it's been home to many events, including the Capital City Public Market. We have Father's Day car show there, Man in Motion celebrating alternative transportation modes. So 8th Street was really teed up, again, much like 4th Street, for the opportunity that we saw in front of us as part of the COVID response. Just a couple of shots of 8th Street showing the bike lane and the investments that were made over the years in infrastructure. This was, of course, pre-COVID, pre-open, so to speak, where vehicular traffic was allowed throughout the day. Another shot of 8th Street from the street level. So as we all know, things changed about 3 months ago when COVID hit worldwide. It hit 8th Street especially hard just because of the nature of the businesses there. Many restaurant and retail businesses were some of the hardest hit in the city, and it forced the closure of many of these establishments. Some stayed open with limited hours, takeout, but it was really a tough time for a lot of these businesses, and it was a long 2 to 3 months, to say the least. So in the staged reopening that occurred with the state of Idaho's reopening program, restaurants were allowed to reopen in stage 2, which was May 15th. And although they were allowed to reopen, of course, the restrictions in place that, of course, were in the interest of public health, limited the typical customer base that they would otherwise be able to bring in. So in the interest of providing an opportunity that would help address some of our most vulnerable businesses and workers, Boise City Council passed a resolution on May 19th that allowed broadly the use of public right-of-way, or I should say directed the city to explore options for the use of public right-of-way for temporary use by businesses. And as mentioned, 8th Street is really a natural proof of concept location for this, and being under city ownership allowed us to look at moving quickly to put together a response that would help businesses almost immediately with some options to help expand their own options to serve customers. So on June 4th, we opened 8th Street with expanded patios and limited access to motorized vehicles. So some of the overall project goals. So the goal here was, in light of COVID, just really to provide a direct response and assistance measure, which, as a city, we are limited in the ways that we can provide direct assistance. We own this asset in 8th Street, so this was a way for us to do something relatively quickly and with some pretty clear substance. And it was also key to the goal here was to create a template for other opportunities that this could be applied to throughout the city. Of course, maintaining public health through safe outdoor dining and expanded use of 8th Street for active modes was another key goal. Throughout all this, we wanted to make sure that we ensured broad accessibility for all users and to balance needs across the user base. Not an easy task, but something that we wanted to make sure was an absolute priority from the beginning. And then to, as a practical measure, allow for some vehicular access where it was appropriate. Deliveries still take place on the street between 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. And we have a very limited amount of traffic that goes through an alley that bisects a portion of the street. So that was one of the practical measures we wanted to make sure we addressed and tested. So as we go, we'll of course assess whether this is something we want to continue, but for now it was I guess erring on the side of caution to keep that delivery access in place. And so in the spirit of that, just staying flexible and being able to adapt to those changing needs and conditions over time was key too. As with pretty much all COVID-related response measures we've looked at in the city, a key is being adaptable and agile, as we've all come to know. Quick overview of the configuration of the block. So again, this north block is really where most of the restaurants are on the 2 blocks of 8th Street. And this concept diagram was something we put together early. We wanted to, as quickly as possible, get the message out to businesses. So with close support from the Downtown Boise Association, we conducted outreach sessions with the businesses on both the north and the south side to just give them an idea of what this could look like and to start to address any initial concerns and get some feedback and essentially do a temperature check to see if this was something that would actually be useful and helpful. And from the beginning, there was strong positive response and some limited concerns, I'd say, mostly around the aspect of takeout and delivery. So we made sure to address some of those early concerns as best we could. But with that early outreach, we were really given the a sort of a go-ahead by the business community to explore how this could happen. And of course, with the council's resolution supporting the city's action, we were able to move ahead fairly quickly from there. Also, we wanted to, I've noted here, fencing. It was mentioned in the last conversation, something about the alcohol serving areas. That was a key consideration here, and I think we spent Jen can concur here, I think, but we spent a lot of time, maybe an inordinate amount of time, trying to figure out the fencing that we would need to configure to contain the alcohol in the patios to make sure that we abided by state code. And also ADA access, again, another key consideration. We wanted to make sure we had identified early on so that we could not only get the custom ramps fabricated to allow access onto these patios from the street, but also to make sure businesses were aware of, it didn't come down to the last minute for how to configure their patios for all users. So again, this is the north block. And then I will quickly just mention here the south block, again, being a slightly different animal with more retail and a diversity of uses beyond just the restaurant. So we have 2 restaurants on the south block. And because of that, we left the street open to vehicular traffic, though we instituted some parking enforcement and limitations on time. So it's a pickup drop-off parking only for a large portion of the street, as well as signage to indicate, basically to encourage traffic calming. So this is another case of making sure that we assess and test as we go. Jen, again, from the DBA, is working closely with businesses there on that south portion to make sure that we're doing the right thing now and going forward. So as we see how this, I guess, this limited vehicular access configuration works, we can adapt that as need be going forward based on business need and safety and other considerations. So getting down to implementation, as I mentioned, this was a tight timeline project. There was a lot of urgency really to put this in place as soon as possible so that we could, as soon as stage 2 began, the clock started for these restaurants. They were staffed up. They had like a third of the customers coming in that they would normally have. We had to make sure that what we were putting in place happened quickly. So we leaned strongly on our partners. Again, the Downtown Boise Association. We worked very closely with businesses and local business owners who became champions of this project, both through just genuine interest and a desire to see the project through, as well as the necessity. This project had to move forward quickly. Folks were happy to jump in and help on this all hands on deck effort. We work closely with the relevant agencies, Ada County Highway District, even though we own the street, again, the alley moving through, and then the other streets that bisect 8th require close coordination for traffic planning and that sort of thing with the Highway District. And alcohol control, another key consideration. a lot of internal stakeholders, a lot of folks shared the load within the city to weigh in on their own priorities, primarily centered around safety and ensuring that we were serving all users, and making sure that we were set up to do that, and that risk was minimized. And then external stakeholders, including a full range of folks, businesses, the landlords, delivery companies, residents, ADA community, walking bike advocates, and the general public, were all part of giving us the input that we needed to help see this project come together. So the approach, being given that state of urgency to put the project in place quickly, our approach was, I'd say, atypical for how we approach most projects at the city. We wanted to get a rough draft on the ground, but not too rough. We wanted to make sure that the perfect wasn't the enemy of the good, and that we had something to put in front of our stakeholders, so that when we opened on June 4th, I think it was more of a soft opening than really, the final product. And ultimately, I think this, and it's debatable, but I think it was the right way for us to do this. It allowed us to get this project on the ground, bring in stakeholders. You see that we would have done it the day of, just because of all the moving parts and construction and equipment and whatnot happening. It happened the day after, but we had a full range of stakeholders from the ADA community and cycling and walking advocates and other members, including those who would be actually opening and closing the street on a daily basis, do a walkthrough with us, the first of two of these walkthroughs the day after we opened, which really helped us to identify what the rough edges were and get some of the early kinks worked out. And I'm very thankful for their participation and support and understanding that our approach here was to make this an iterative process, that we would refine it as we go and make sure that folks were included, so that we could make this as workable as possible for everybody. This other photo here is just a walkthrough we did a couple of days before with the fire department and other internal stakeholders to address some of the code and safety requirements. A few photos of our first day here, opening 8th Street. This is part of the branding that was created with the Downtown Boise Association in support of the Capital City Development Corporation, as well as a whole host of other people from inside the city. Again, a lot of folks made lighter work of this project. Curious, yeah, just a few other pictures. We put together some large stickers to put down on the pavement to emphasize physical distancing. Folks overall, I think, have been very respectful of these measures, and it's nice to have these reminders, and they also serve to help reinforce some of the branding efforts that we have put together as well. What you see here too are these orange barriers are in place for the purpose of being a detectable edge. So for visually impaired folks, we had to make sure that we had detectable edges in areas of the street where it opened back up. So where the bollards were, for example, you still opened up into a major 3-lane street. These made it visible for both vehicular traffic and especially visually impaired folks who needed to, depending on their ability to see, have something bright enough, but also something detectable with a cane to help mitigate any potential accidents at either end of the street. I should say help prevent any of those accidents. So what's next for 8th Street? Again, we're only about 2 weeks in here, and so we're still refining this rough draft that we have, and we're working closely with our stakeholders every day to ensure that we help to that we make improvements and help to make it workable for as many folks as possible. We step back a little bit as a city. We certainly we're responding to things as they come up, but we also want to make sure that businesses help take the lead to come up with creative design solutions. I think, when we first rolled this out, we took a pretty conservative approach with safety being one of the highest priorities. So we erred on the side of safety, and a lot of these places maybe didn't go far enough with the aesthetic side or the design side of things. I think now that we have this project in place, it functions, it looks pretty good, but we have a lot of improvement, a lot of room for improvement in terms of, I think, the aesthetic appeal. So there's some of these creative design solutions that we're sort of looking toward the business community and others to help us come forward with to really make the project shine. So yeah, continuing to work with the Ada County Highway District. We're looking at its long-term viability. Data collection, something mentioned in the previous presentation. We're keenly interested to see, how can we start to demonstrate, with metrics, how this is working, and how do we tell a story based on that. So we're exploring that as well. Love to talk to the folks in Ketchum as we continue down this road and look at what we're measuring and what goals we're trying to achieve with those metrics. And then, of course, looking to expand the template to other areas of the city. This is the exciting part. So we're actually in the midst of moving on that piece now. And again, thank you to the Downtown Boise Association for helping to take many of the ideas that other businesses came forward with and put that in a concept plan. Hopefully, we'll have another chance to talk about that down the road. Checking how I'm doing on time. I'll make this quick. I guess I'll just say, again, I can't emphasize enough stakeholder outreach. I enjoy that part of the project. I think it's what makes us all better. We embrace it, and we're looking to continue to do that, I think, for the duration of the project. And I think if we do it well, this could be something that stays in place, but that I think that remains to be seen, and it'll be a test of how well we build upon what we have now to make it even better and something that can be durable over time. I'll just reemphasize, I think it was okay not to be perfect on the first day. It gave us an opportunity to really know where we needed to improve, to listen to our stakeholders and do it on the ground and do it collaboratively. And I appreciated that opportunity to do it. This thank you is a thank you to all of you, as well as a thank you to everyone involved in this project. It was a big lift, and it couldn't have happened without the extraordinary work of a number of team members, across the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. Really proud that we were able to make this a collaborative effort and put it in place quickly. It couldn't have happened without the cooperation of our many partners. So thank you all for listening, and love to take any questions.
That is a great presentation, Sean. Thank you. I want to get to this one question that Christine wrote in the chat box.
Okay.
She asked, did you put up any notices like bicyclists reduce speed entering a high pedestrian zone?
Oh yeah, so we have, I know we have signage, and others feel free to weigh in here. I know that there was that feedback initially on the project, and I would like to say that signage has either gone in or is going in, because we're relying on really signage to help govern how people work in that space. So yeah, acknowledged if it's not there, it's something that we're working on putting in.
So Sean, I know you need to go in a few minutes. Are there any questions that anybody would like to ask Sean? Colby?
Yes, Sean, the city has been very critical in the past of other organizations closing off facilities without prior warning, proper signage or detours. I came across the A Street closing on my bike, and the A Street bike lanes and the A Street bike accessibility is very important to cyclists as well as younger kids, families of cyclists, etc. I came across this the day that it closed, and there was no proper signage, there was no proper warning, and there was no detours. So,
yeah, Colby, I'll thank you, and I'll just address that with one thing I clearly remember on the first day was seeing signage in the bike lane saying they were closed, which couldn't have frustrated me anymore as a daily cyclist and commuter. That was simply an issue of something broke down in coordination with the contractor. And yeah, I'll as someone who was leading that project, I'm happy to take full blame for that. We rectified that quickly. Another piece that we addressed, and let me know if this isn't addressing your question adequately, but the ADA portion, so the accessibility portion that blocks the street on either end of the north portion, so we have those detectable barriers there. That was an early issue that on like that day 2, where we had the stakeholders from the various members of the ADA community, cycling community, and others in the transportation space. We just all got on the ground, worked together to try to look at, okay, how are we going to find something that that works for all users here, and how are we going to balance these priorities in a way that we can all walk away from and say, it works. This is something that we can all agree upon for now, and then look at given that we had to put it together in about 2 weeks, how can we improve upon it in the future?
So I know Jim Hansen has a question, but I want to get to Deanna's really quickly before then. And she asks, if this becomes permanent, would the city consider making it a pedestrian only corridor, removing the bike parking from the corridor?
Removing the bike parking from the corridor. I don't think we would remove bike parking. I think making it a place for all users necessitates having bike parking in there. I mean, we've seen a lot of demand for bike parking, so I don't think we would remove it.
And what about would the city consider making it pedestrian only?
I think that's going to be something that as we get toward the end of summer, as we've had a chance to see how this works and how businesses have received it, we'll certainly revisit that and have that conversation. It's going to depend upon how it works, and as Colby emphasized, how this works for everybody. So if we can make sure that we optimize it, do our best to make it work as well as it can, then yeah, I think we'll be in a good position to revisit that question at the end of the summer.
Jim Hansen, did you have a question?
Oh, I just wanted to follow up and see if there is a process to consider other areas outside of downtown core. The perception, I think, outside of the downtown was that's kind of the low-hanging fruit. There was already pretty significant restrictions on automobile use in there. It was a pretty heavy pedestrian area. Is there a process the city's looking into to invite businesses and neighborhoods to say, we have a little pool of money, we can do some things, make a proposal to us. The businesses, in particular the restaurants who don't have their own parking, they rely on street parking it's like, well, here's an opportunity for businesses on a mall or something. You can see they have opportunities to expand into their own private parking lot, but they can't if they're on an older street, Vista and Orchard and even Broadway. I'm encouraged that in Ketchum, at least there was some participation, if not full cooperation by ITD. Broadway is a great example of an area that could really use this. So is there a next step for those businesses outside of the downtown core who can come to you and say, we'd like to do this, but we're not too sure how? How can we do this?
Yes, thanks, Jim. So I think that the first step in helping to make that happen was the openness and willing participation of ACHD to help work with the city to identify what some of those areas could be. So our initial effort was supported heavily by the Downtown Boise Association, which looked at those other areas around downtown. And again, this was really something that was driven by the business community after seeing 8th Street and the concept and having that prove out as something that could be successful. businesses around downtown came forward and put forth a number of proposals, which were then packaged up into one concept plan that the DPA then submitted to us. So now we're creating that process of reviewing those and determining feasibility as the council directed us to do. The council also addressed areas outside of downtown, I think with, by speaking broadly about uses of right-of-way and also parking areas, for example. So in areas outside of downtown, perhaps where there are other opportunities on private property for parking, for example, that might be something that could be more viable for some of those businesses. Just thinking about, Broadway Vista, for example. So that's where we're really taking our direction from that council resolution, and realizing that there are different approaches that will work for different areas. So perhaps some of those areas outside downtown could be more focused on parking areas. Could be a street as well. I mean, there are other opportunities certainly outside of downtown to look at limiting vehicular access. So yes, I mean, to answer your question, the process is being driven by 8th Street as the initial template, B as the kind of expanded downtown area as the second step, and then beyond that, it will be driven by folks who come to us with, basically a plan or a desire to do something where they are, and we can assess that feasibility, as we go.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm from the bench, and I'm the president of a Central Neighborhood Association, and I walked throughout our neighborhood, and I talked with the business owners about what is happening downtown, that the businesses are opening to the streets, towards the streets. And the only business that was interested in that was a business that opened perhaps 2 years ago, the Boise Pie. They said, yes, we are expanding to the outside of our business. We are putting chairs outdoors. All the other ones, also the ones on the mall, were like, oh, no. So it was like the business were not open for this suggestion. What was different? What do you think is different with the business downtown? Why are they more willing to rethink the concept?
That's a great question. I think it's partially a function of the type of space. So, in different areas of the city, you have spaces function differently. So it's real estate's at a premium downtown. I think we can all agree on that. So use of right-of-way to expand areas that businesses can operate, I think means more perhaps for businesses downtown than it might mean for businesses outside of downtown. That's not to say that it, that it wouldn't be something that businesses would want. I think that we've already heard from folks outside of the downtown core who are interested in doing this, but as it was with 8th Street and the greater downtown, it was kind of an organic effort that was driven largely by the interest of the business community to see this through. So yeah, I think to your question as to, why was there interest downtown, and why is there, from your perspective, maybe less on the bench, just a function of the needs of these particular areas and how their spaces function around them, around businesses.
So I need to cut this short. I think Sean has something he needs to get to, and several of us need to get rolling right now. I know we could talk about this for a long time. This is a great project, great presentation, Sean. Thanks for coming and talking to us today about this. We really appreciate it. We appreciate the city's effort.